Okay, Catholic value screening, investing 101. So we're going to have to catch up a little bit on our time. I still see a bunch of eyeballs, so no one's sleeping yet. We're doing good. This short slide about basically we screen more than $1 billion in assets for clients and vote more than 350 million in proxies. And last year it was about 4,000 different proxies that we were voting and through for companies. So that's something we'll talk about today. So a guy like me who does this kind of work and passionate about it loves data. So I'm a fact guy. So we have to collect that data. So the first step in determining if a company's good, bad, or how good they are, how bad they are is we got to have data. So that data doesn't really, it doesn't matter to it what it is. It's data. So how much, it could be did they make an abortifacient, it could be how many fines they had, environmental fines, whatever. So we have to collect that data. And so you've got to have a big database to do that because you got to put that somewhere. And then you want to collect it every year. You want to see if there's a trend or. So one of the things we first started with when we began was building a trend and collecting this stuff. So we started collecting. First it was a few data points, just a few companies, about 100. And now, as you can see at the bottom, it's about 30,000 different companies that we collect this on. How do we get it? Where does it come from? Well, we get it from company websites. Sometimes the companies tell us what they do. We get it from government websites that publish this data for us. There's watchdog websites that tell us things like this. And then the last one you might not be that familiar with is kind of screen scraping. So that means that a little code goes out and it looks at a website, and when it finds what it wants, it just peels that off and puts it in our database so we can use it. And it's very important to us. We also use providers, and so we collect our own data, some of it, and then we also do research projects. But we also collect data from providers, and so in a minute, Joe and I will talk a little bit about proxy voting, but his company actually provides us with the data feed. We also get data from Bloomberg as well. We do our own projects on certain different areas. Usually this is things that don't line up that well. So for us, a big one last year was how to handle the new public companies that sell marijuana. So what do? There's different ways to be involved. Some of them sell it in a retail store. Some of them just grow it. Some of them use it just for pharma. And so, it's kind of like, when is it a good thing and when is it a bad thing? And that's sort of what collecting our own research is all about. I always like to tell this little story. So my middle son has epilepsy. And if you ever had a child that had a seizure, you know it's kind of scary. One of the medicines that's used for epilepsy, it's in trial right now, is a spray medicine that has marijuana in it. You spray it on their arm and they stop having a seizure. That's incredible. So if you were a parent, you could do that. You think it was pretty good. So it's hard to say marijuana is all bad when it does that for your son. So that's the kind of thing where kind of looking through that research and how it fits together. There's basically three ways that when we pull data together, we're looking at three areas. One of those is this book. So we talked about the book, and I'll go through it in detail. No, this is the book again, this is the book. The other one is that we collect data from our clients. So if we have a new client, and it's a diocese, or maybe it's a fund company, or maybe it's an individual, we collect what they screen, and we sort of graph it. So then we have clients that say, of your clients, who's screening out tobacco? And we'll say, well, 10% screening out tobacco. And we can tell them that. And that gives them information on how to handle their screening. And then the last one is we have a screening advisory board. And this board it grows, it gets smaller, grows, it gets smaller. But this board are people that are weighing in on these things. So we know this is a document, but this is how we really feel. And it's a great thing when looking at the particulars of just how do you handle something. A couple of months ago, Pope Francis put out a directive that they would no longer sell cigarettes in the Vatican. So does that mean anything for screening? There's no cigarettes in the Vatican. So that kind of stuff, we just sort of work through that. All of this is to get us to the bullseye. So I love the word algorithm, but it's not real exciting. So we call it the screen set. So basically the way this works is if you've ever went on Google and asked where you could get a pizza, you know how an algorithm works. You put in, I want a pizza, and I want a deep dish, and I live in Central Arlington, boom, 3 places come up. Some have star ratings. You say, oh yeah, that one looks the best. You call them, you get your pizza, and hopefully, if the algorithm works right, Chinese food doesn't show up. It's our pizza, so it came out that way. That's exactly how screen sets work. So we've collected all this data, we've got it all in there, and now we have to pull it out for you. Our screen set that we've developed over the years is called the FFV scorecard, and it stands for Faith and Family Values. If we do a product of any kind with anybody, we usually put FFV somewhere in the name or in the literature. It puts all the 6 screens together, plus it's these social items, these things that we were talking about. We can weight and measure anything. So we work with our clients on that. So if they say, you know, we run a hospital and we have to take care of a lot of people that have cancer, so we're really concerned about tobacco, we'll weight that heavier for them because that's what they want. But we're always keeping these 6 basic areas in place and always kind of moving them to our way of thinking in all of these things. Next, I'd say we offer a basic. So a client might say, you know, I like this, but I'm not totally sure how bought in I am to the FFV part. I just want to get the basics. So we have a screen set that is this book. So it's just this book and turnkey, and they can pick that. And we also can build something custom for them, something that fits what they're looking for. So the first step, so now we got data, now we got our algorithm, we got our pizza coming to our house and not our Chinese food. So now we have to figure out, what do we actually own? That's the hard part. So you probably get a statement in the mail, or you give a statement to your clients, and in that statement you've got funds. And you don't really know what's in those funds, I imagine. I mean, you sort of do, you know the strategy, but that's about it. So you're not really sure. So a lot of times what people will do is they buy a fund or an investment that has a really Catholic name. Or maybe it has SRI in the title or something, because they figure, well, at least that's in there. So what I'm saying is, or I'm submitting to you, is with data, you can know a little bit better than that. So normally people would buy a private fund, which is a type of investment, or mutual fund, most common, most people would probably know about that. Exchange traded fund or another commingled. One of the number 1 reasons when we talk to a new diocese client that they don't want to screen is they're in what they call a commingled fund, which means they're with a bunch of people. And they're like, well, I don't control this thing anyway, so I can't do anything because it's commingled. So the first step we do is break all of that out. So we break all those pieces out. So now all of a sudden, we got a bunch of little IBMs running around and a bunch of little Amazons and this and that, and they're all there. The next thing we have to do is we have to kind of get them in a format. Now you might not know this, but that's not that we're picking on IBM, but just for fun. IBM has stocks on different exchanges. So I can hold IBM on a bunch of different exchanges, which means there's a bunch of IBMs. IBM also they also have bonds that they've done over the years. I don't really even know the total, but I think it's near 1,000 of them. So we've got to get that to where we can screen it. So we can't have IBM bond 1986, and it won't work that way. So we've got to get it in a format. So the first thing we do is boil that all down to that format so that you have exactly what you own in a format where it can be screened. Then we get the band back together. So now that we got them all separated, and we know we might have 5 IBMs, but it's the same IBM, it's just different exchanges or whatever, we put them together. A great example of this, a great one, is British American Tobacco, which is always a big topic, because they have BAT, which is British, you don't normally want to call something tobacco, so why not call it BAT, right? And then you have BAT India and BAT this, BAT that, BAT, but they're all the same thing. So it's all different countries that they're in on exchanges. So get the band back together. Once we do that, we just match it. So we've got the pizza showed up, we know what it is, we got the companies, put those together, and we can tell you how many of those things fell and what they fell for. Sometimes multiple things. One of the things we're working on right now and kind of developing is we're playing around with a little scoring system. So that is, hey, look, this company does pass, but it's not too great. It does pass because we want data. So we don't want to ever knock anyone out just because anecdotally these are the bad guys. We want to do it for a good reason. Next, I would say that the results got to make sense. So a couple of years ago, we had a client ask us, it was specifically on the theme of tobacco, about International Paper, and they were failing them. And at the time, International Paper was making cigarette boxes, paper for boxes. Well, that really wasn't exactly what they were after. They were trying to stop the tobacco. They really weren't that concerned about a paper being sold through a broker and ending up in a cigarette carton. So you have to make sure it makes sense, and you have to make sure that it gets to what the client wants. This is something I think the church could use more of overall, transparency. And this is important in screening. So we want to know, what do we own and how do the people vote that? So once we get all of that together, we got all the people taken apart, we put it back together for you. So your fund, we can tell you, your fund has an 8% FFV fail rate. Your fund has a this. So my little vision, I guess you could say, for all of this is, I sort of think in the back of my head, why does a fund have to be called Catholic to be a good Catholic investment? Maybe it doesn't. And so I think over time, as we pull more results in, we could actually say this ETF that is out here is a great Catholic fund, but it might not even have Catholic in the name. That's sort of to come as we go and get the big picture. So if you can remember this, you have a great memory. This is how we do it. This is the infographic. This is the process we invented that we work through, and luckily it's very simple to follow. Not really, but the basic point of this is that everything is on a process. So one of the things I never want to have happen is, this is a bad company. Why is it a bad company? Oh, it's just got to be a bad company. This environmental company, we're not going to own them. They're terrible. Why are they bad? Well, they're just bad because they do things in the environment. That can't be the answer. It's got to be based on data. And then the last piece that I'll just sort of point out is impact achieved at a corporate level. We're going to jump into proxy voting here in a minute, but this is really where kind of the rubber meets the road. So getting the proxy and getting the company you can own is sort of only half the battle. So when I think of the future, I think of Back to the Future. How many of you kind of are that way? So I love Back to the Future. So here we go. This is the future of this type of this world. First, we're going to get more Catholic doctrine and more results into our screening. We're working on ways to do that. We need to poll our clients more. We need to understand what they're doing and what they're seeing and build better screens based on that. Daniel mentioned this, Catholic ESG. It's gotta come along. Right now it's kind of small and infancy. It needs to kind of move along more. More timely data. We have got to get, when we started, there were data that we could only get every 2 years. Now we can, am I still here? Now we can get data every day. We can get it during the day. So we're going to have more data that's up to date and improve our results. At the end of the day, what most clients want, and these are institutions, individuals, advisors, they want turnkey. They want to push a button and tell me whether Home Depot or Lowe's is better. That's what they're looking for. So all of this complication of this big infographic has to give you a very simple result. And that's where we're going. And the last is rising tide. If somebody calls us and wants to start a new product to have available, we don't say no. So we're looking for people who want to bring product to market.